Namaskar and welcome to episode number 9 of Pustakalya Wala Podcast. We are officially in the second week, like really officially, like definitely 9 days, 10 days in a row actually. Today is the 10th day in a row. So let's go on with what we were discussing yesterday, the sleep is the next topic. What happens in sleep when you are sleeping, and what that state tells us about the consciousness, the working of the consciousness, and how is it different from waking state, right? This is what Susan Pocket writes. The major biologically important difference between the states of waking and sleep is that in sleep, external sensory stimuli are prevented from acting on the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is, I think, considered as the I would say the driver of agency, but I'm not sure. I think that's what it is. It's the self knowledge, and the is the biggest in humans, but I think some one of the biggest in humans, but I think some of the other animals have bigger cerebral cortex. Some of the other intelligent ones. The mechanism by which this block is imposed are known in some detail. This is done by something called thalamus. The what thalamus does is it is actually perfectly placed for the role of regulating access of sensory stimuli to the cortex. So all the sensory stimuli, sight and sound and touch, I guess, except for smell, all must go through the thalamus in order to reach the cortex. And in the sleep state, not only are the sensory messages not transmitted through the thalamus, but the state of the thalamus that blocks sensory traffic also causes major slow rhythmic activity in the cortex, of a sort which should overwhelm any of the smaller, faster, and more complex sensory EEG patterns which did escape thalamic blockade. For the new people who are wondering what the hell am I talking about, this is actually understanding the brain, understanding what the different wave patterns of the brain correlate to correlate to which conscious state. And in yesterday we understood, we learned that the drowsier the state is, the more unconscious the state is, the 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 more slow rhythmic activity of the brain is captured by the EEG. So if you are fully awake, your brain activity is more towards high frequency, lower amplitude, and when you are sleeping in deep sleep, it's low frequency, higher amplitude, just a major relax, or something like that. I don't know. I'm just making a sound which corresponds to lower frequency, higher amplitude. Anyway, wait. So I read this, and actually, I was thinking about the whole thing yesterday. This is the only fact I'm going to discuss today. And why? Because I had a weird thought yesterday. We are trying to differentiate between the two different theories, not different, but two competing, not competing, but two independent theories, you can say, of or how consciousness can arise. At least we have made it in our minds that there are two different competing theories of consciousness. But is it really competing? Are they really competing? One of them, first of all, one of the theories is that EM field is identical to the conscious state, which says that EM field is responsible for the pattern itself is the thing. The EM wave pattern, the EM field pattern is synonymous with consciousness, with feeling something, a sense that there is the lights are on. This is what we are investigating through this book. And the other theory is just that information is information is the result of information processing. That's one of the parts of psychoneural theory. The psychoneural theory being that the fact that neurons are firing, the firing of the actual neurons is causing the creation of the consciousness. Now, is it really have we segregated the whole thing too much? Are we missing the whole point? I mean, if we are saying that psychoneural theory is correct, let's say, we are saying that the firing of neurons causes consciousness. It's identical to consciousness. Well, how do they function? What is the mechanism through which the neuronal firing affects other neurons? Isn't it at the base level because of the EM fields? Like, even touch, even if that's how I started the whole thing. If touching an object at microscopic level, at the level of molecules and atoms, is the result of interaction in this EM field, isn't the actual working of the neurons a result of EM fields? Like, how there is firing, neuronal firing happening in patterns, and then there is an EM field related to the whole thing, related to the firing. And then the third fact is that consciousness is resulting from this whole scenario. Now, are we just really digging a hole and throwing ourselves into it? We have artificially created boundaries around these two ideas, that either consciousness is identical to EM field patterns, or it's identical to the neuronal firing, or it's identical to information processing, right? Can we really segregate these ideas so thoroughly? We cannot. Actually, the actual working of neurons is because there is EM fields, there are electromagnetic fields in the universe. As we are sitting looking at things, if we really try to understand what we are looking at, I'm talking about my room and my desk and my table and my chair and my desk and table. You have a desk and a table, rich guy, and a printer and a laptop and everything. I am inundated with these waves, EM waves, and they are reflecting from my skin, but my eyes can absorb them and I can see things. My brain can interpret those things because of these waves. We are inundated with these things. It's everywhere. It permeates reality, and the working of the neurons have to be a part of the whole because of these fields. Now, is EM fields, the working of the EM field somehow sneaks in consciousness. Maybe it is conscious to be that field. Maybe we are just the manifestation of the EM field. These kind of questions I realized yesterday when I was sitting and thinking about this problem and what I've been doing in the last 8-9 days. I realized that this might not be the right approach to the problem. This might not be the right approach to the problem. I also saw a 1 hour presentation by Anil Seth, the neuroscientist, who is working on the problem of consciousness in the University of Sussex. And he put forth this optimism. I have discussed this optimism before. He's put forth this optimism that we can chip away at the easy problem of consciousness to understand how the brain creates perception, how do we perceive things, how does if we, and he says, if we understand the brain thoroughly, we will understand how consciousness arises. It's like the historical problem of differentiating between living and non-living things, and people were thinking no matter how much you explain the workings of the non-living, the living things, the people who are living, there has to be some elan vital or essence vital or something like that. I can't speak Latin. Is it Latin? Is possible for that, is required for that. And this kind of thinking is mirrored in consciousness problem. And we are thinking it has to come from somewhere. This consciousness has to come from, has to be the property of the universe separately. And we are trying to find it in our EM field theories. Now, there's nothing wrong with what we are doing. I'm actually learning with every sentence something new and something very important about just the way you can do research in neurosciences. But I think our understanding of this subject has changed sufficiently in the last few years that I think I personally should actually read something that is written by Anil Seth and express my understanding on this podcast about that. And I'll tell you why. Because I created this video which explores the lack of boundaries in nature. We don't have, this is the philosophy of William James, the radical empiricism, the essays on radical empiricism, where he kind of explains that the boundaries of the mind, the boundaries is the property, the boundaries that we see in the universe is actually the property of our minds and the way we understand knowledge and the way we gather information. We do it in this sense, in this way where we conceptualize things, we make things into concepts, and then we try to combine those concepts. Why is that applicable here? Well, my mind has segregated the problem into, this is consciousness and these are EM fields and these are the neuronal firings and these are the information, this is information processing that's happening, all these different things, concepts, and then we try to combine them. Because EM fields interact with neurons in these ways, so it must help the firing of neurons. And we are not seeing the forest for the trees. The fact that EM fields and the neuronal firing they are so intimately entangled, or as I feel they are, because how else are the neurons firing? The whole the current that is flowing through the nerve cells, the actual basic building blocks of our brain, the nerve cells, the cells, one cell that starts from our toes, goes up to our brain, this long cell, this nerve cell, the firing inside that is allowing us to understand, allowing us to perceive the pain in our toes. I'm talking too much, but yeah, those that works because of EM fields, and we cannot segregate them and then try to combine them. Don't we have to study them together and understand that maybe, just maybe, we don't need an external Elan Vital of consciousness? Maybe perception, maybe the nature of consciousness might just be the fact that in order to be able to do this kind of information processing, it has to feel like something there. It has to feel like something because that's the computation that is required. The reaction of the mind to certain stimuli is the result of, and you can always say, I mean, of course, this is not the answer. This cannot be the answer because I don't know why, but of course it's not. So, I mean, I'll have to read Anil Seth's work, and I'm really excited. Maybe I'll put this aside for now and pick up that work. Anyways, this book is 20 years old, and maybe I should be reading latest material on this because I'm really excited now. This book has helped me a lot in understanding the problem, but I think we are looking at the problem in the wrong way. So this video that I created, that I was talking about, is one of the reasons I decided to not over conceptualize things and understand that reality doesn't work in that way. Reality doesn't see itself as segregated between the EM field and the consciousness and the information processing and the neuronal firing. All these four things might just be a result of this whole way in which universe works. And I've talked too much today, 18 minutes, but this is how I feel about this problem, and I'm really learning new things, and I'm really excited, and maybe this can lead to something fascinating for me personally. I'm not saying anything can come out of it or whatever, but just the fact that these kind of thoughts are coming into the mind because of all the things that I've been reading is interesting, and I'll try to continue this every day if I can. And all the best, and comment and share and ask questions and tell me if I'm doing justice to the topic. Tell me if I am interesting enough to even listen to, or is it just all, I'm probably sure no one is gonna listen to this, but whatever. Maybe me in 100 years or something. 100 years? Me in 20 years or something.